Okay, we are going to jump into chapter 43, which is the immune system. So the immune system is super interesting. Lots of really interesting information about it, and we're still learning more and more about it. And there's a lot of interesting genetics pieces to the process and how new antibodies can be created. So very, very cool. We're not going to dig too much into the genetics piece of the antibody production, but if you're interested in the immune system, that's a really cool place to start looking at research potentials and maybe even future jobs. So some terms that we need to know. Pathogens are any agents that can cause disease, that can infect a wide range of animals, including humans. Pathogens could be viruses, they could be bacterial cells, they could be fungi, they could be viroids, they could be prions. So there's a wide range of things that can be described as a pathogen. What the immune system is a group of cells and a whole system that interacts to destroy these pathogens. So it's a way that our bodies are able to, first of all, help defend against these pathogens, but then also identify pathogens and help to rid the body of these pathogens. If that immune system doesn't work properly, then you're going to be in trouble. You potentially could have death due to an infection, or it could also be that the immune system is targeting its own cells. And we'll talk about that at the end of this chapter too. So we'll be talking about the fact that the immune system is really good at recognizing self versus non-self cells. So again, this is very, very important. If the immune system recognizes self cells, meaning cells that are of our own bodies, then we have autoimmune disorders. So it's important that the immune system be trained and only target non-self particles or molecules, like viruses and other pathogens that we were talking about. Here's an example, a picture down here. This is a immune cell, it's a macrophage. These little circles are bacterial cells, and you can see that the macrophage is targeting those bacterial cells and will eventually pull the bacterial cells inside of it, break those bacterial cells down. So that's one way the immune system works to get rid of these bacterial cells or pathogens in general. So when we talk about the different types of the immune system, again, we're just going to cover big picture ideas, but we'll see that all animals have what's described as innate immunity. Innate immunity is defensive actions, or not even just actions, but defensive barriers that are in place. And these are defenses that are active immediately upon infection. Innate immunity does include the barrier defenses. So barrier defense is a good example for us. A barrier defense would be skin. So skin is a great way to keep pathogens from potentially entering into our bodies. We'll see that vertebrates, including us, also have what's described as adaptive immunity. Adaptive immunity is immunity that is adapted or changes based on the pathogens that you're exposed to. So what happens is that innate immunity is really good as a first line of defense against pathogens, and then adaptive immunity is what we would describe as specific defenses against pathogens that we have seen before or that we have been vaccinated against. Adaptive immunity takes a little bit longer for development, but it does have lasting effects using memory cells, which we'll talk about. So again, this is a great sort of summary slide for the whole thing. Innate immunity versus adaptive immunity. Innate immunity, again, all animals are going to have variations of innate immunity. So very rapid response. And this innate immunity is recognition of traits shared by broad ranges of pathogens. So very small set of common receptors that you might find on pathogens. Barrier defenses would be skin, again, for us. And other animals, mucous membranes, which the mucus secretions help to trap any potential pathogens. Innate immunity also includes not only barrier defenses, but some internal defenses. Phagocytic cells, these are cells that are going to be described as macrophages early in development. These phagocytic cells, again, kind of act like Pac-Man. This is a good example, like I said, a macrophage or a phagocytic cell that will eat the bacteria, again, pull it inside and break it down. Natural killer cells are non-specific way to kill pathogens. There are antimicrobial proteins, and then also the generalized inflammatory response is part of innate immunity. When we look at adaptive immunity, again, only found in vertebrates, these are this side of the immune system is a slower response, but it is a very specific response to particular pathogens. And then there's two sides to adaptive immunity that we'll talk about. There's the humoral response and the cell-mediated response. The humoral response specifically is when antibodies are produced, and these antibodies are released from cells into body fluids. Remember, humor, H-U-M-O-R, is the Latin word for body fluid. So the humoral response relies upon body fluids, including the lymphatic system and also the blood supply as well. So antibodies will move around there to target specific pathogens. The other side of the adaptive immune system is using cells. So it's described as the cell-mediated response. This is where cytotoxic cells are used to defend against infection in particular body cells. So cells that have already been infected by a pathogen will be targeted by these cytotoxic cells. And we'll talk about T cells and B cells. We'll talk about the difference between cytotoxic T cells, helper T cells. So all of these are terms that you probably have heard before. So we're going to look at some details of the innate versus the adaptive immune systems. Okay, so looking at, again, just some general ideas. We mentioned innate immunity. When we talk about innate immunity in vertebrates, specifically in mammals, we talked about barrier defenses. We also talked about briefly phagocytosis, so our phagocytes. So these are cells that eat things. Remember, phago means to eat. And then also some antimicrobial peptides can be used as well. Good example of antimicrobial peptides would be molecules called lysozyme. So saliva and tears typically have a enzyme called a lysozyme, which is specific to bacterial cell walls. So if we think about the eye, right, is a pretty good place for viruses or bacteria to enter into the body. So pathogens have a nice, easy way into the body through the eye, and people are not great about washing their hands and also touch their faces and their eyes a lot. So to help prevent some of the infection that might happen as part of the innate immune system, there is an enzyme called lysozyme that's present in tears and in fluids produced from the eye, which help to reduce the ability of those pathogens to cause infection. Some other parts of the immune system are the innate immune system in vertebrate cells, natural killer cells, interferons, and the inflammatory response. So we'll talk about some of these examples. So barrier defenses, like I mentioned before, barrier defenses include the skin, mucous membranes, and mucous membranes are found typically in body systems that have openings to the outside. So respiratory system, think about the mouth and the nose have mucous membranes. The urinary system has an opening to the outside through the urethra. And then the reproductive tracts also have mucous membranes that are associated with them as well. So the mucus is really good at trapping and allowing for removal of microbes. So think about in your nose, right? You really don't notice the mucus that your body is producing if you are healthy, but if you have some sort of infection, you know that you're producing extra mucus, and that's because your body is working hard to trap those extra pathogens. You blow your nose, you cough, right? And these are ways that your body can get rid of the extra pathogens. It's also a pretty smart way for the pathogen to be spread to other people, right? Other hosts as well. So many body fluids are very hostile to microbes because of the enzymes that we find in these body fluids. So saliva, mucus, tears, I mentioned, are all hostile to many microbes. So it's a great way to prevent infections. The digestive system and the skin also have low pH. So low pH, meaning it's acidic, helps to prevent the growth of some specific types of bacteria. We also know that there's a lot of healthy bacteria that are a part of our bodies that live inside and on our skin and in our digestive tract. Those are parts of our normal microbiomes. So those are the good bacteria. But these good bacteria not only are helping us in terms of breaking things down in our digestive system, but can also help to outcompete anything that could potentially become pathogenic. So that's something that is important for our normal microbiome as well. There are a couple different types of phagocytic cells. Remember, phagocytic cells kind of act like Pac-Man that engulf or bring pathogens inside. So in mammals, two main phagocytic cells are neutrophils and macrophages. I mentioned macrophages before on that first image with the picture. Neutrophils are a type of white blood cell that circulate around in the blood. They're the most common or most abundant type of white blood cell that act as general phagocytic cells. So anything that they find circulating around in the blood supply that looks like a pathogen, they will engulf it and break those potential pathogens down. They also not only are engulfing or taking up things that could be pathogens, but also debris, right? Anything like a waste product or something that's not supposed to be inside of the body. So things like pollen or pollutants that come in through the air or through food products, those can be eaten up and taken out of the blood supply by neutrophils. Macrophages are specialized phagocytic cells that migrate through the body. They can migrate through tissues, through organs, and then there are some macrophages that stay permanently inside of specific organs and tissues as well. Some other types of phagocytic cells would be dendritic cells. Dendritic cells are found in the skin. They do help to stimulate the adaptive immune system, and we'll talk about more about the adaptive immune system. Eosinophils are another type of white blood cell. So neutrophil is a white blood cell. That's the most common type I said. Eosinophils are found in a lower percentage, but these white blood cells are specifically important for helping to defend against parasites. So if a blood draw was done and we saw in that person that their blood supply had a higher percentage of eosinophils than normal, then we might suspect that they could have a parasitic infection. So these eosinophils are really good at emitting destructive enzymes that help to kill any parasites that could be living inside of the body. I mentioned natural killer cells. Natural killer cells are, again, a way to non-specifically kill things that could become infectious or could be a pathogen potentially. These natural killer cells are circulating around through the body, and they often help to detect abnormal cells. These abnormal cells could be, again, something that's foreign that has come in from the outside of the body, but they also could be your cells that have been damaged in some way by maybe chemicals or toxins. Maybe there's a great amount of DNA damage that could potentially lead to cancers. So natural killer cells are a great way to get rid of cells that are not able to be fixed and are not functioning properly. And we want to get rid of those because we don't want to leave them around to potentially mutate further and become cancers. So natural killer cells are good at killing these abnormal cells. And they do that by releasing particular chemicals that lead to the cell death. So again, very good at helping to prevent spread of infection from one cell type to another, or like I mentioned, help to inhibit cancerous cells from either forming or from spreading to other parts of the body. This is a picture of the lymphatic system. So the lymphatic system is actually very important in the immune system. In some of the organs of the lymphatic system are important for creating immune cells. Also very important in helping to circulate cells around the body. So you can see that the lymphatic system kind of looks like the blood supply, almost looks like the cardiovascular system. And you see all of these green vessels. That is going to be carrying fluids, and this would be lymph is the type of fluid that's carried around them. You see, if you look up close, that the lymphatic system is actually closely aligned and associated with the cardiovascular blood vessels, and you can see that they are intertwined and very close together. Some major organs that we find in the lymphatic system are the thymus. This is where our T cells are going to be matured. Here's the spleen. Spleen is another major producer of immune system cells, and then also helps to regulate red blood cells as well. Let's see, the appendix. Peyer's patches are specifically sections of the lymphatic system that we find in the small intestine. And then you have concentrations of lymphatic tissue in areas throughout the body called lymph nodes. These lymph nodes are, again, concentrations of white blood cells, macrophages, natural killer cells. And you can see that there are often concentrations of lymph nodes around entry points, exit points to the body, or in the case, again, you find lymph nodes at the attachment site of the legs to the body, again, the arms and the body, lots of them up and around our nose and our mouth. Adenoids and tonsils are actually just specific lymph nodes found in these areas here. This is showing you what a lymph node looks like up close. You can see the lymph actually flows into these lymph nodes, and then there are tons of defensive immune cells inside here, which help to target anything that could be potentially pathogenic. You also might have heard of when people have cancers and they have tissues removed, they try to get, again, say it was a breast cancer, they take out the breast tissue that's cancerous, but often a way that cancer can spread from the primary site or the first site of cancer to a secondary site is through the lymphatic system. So they might take out regions of lymph nodes. So they might remove all of these if they're talking about helping to prevent a breast cancer from moving to a secondary site. So lymph nodes are often where we find cancer if it has metastasized or moved from the primary site. A few other parts of the innate immune system. Interferon is a very common type of protein. So there are quite a few different interferons. They interfere with viruses and also help to activate macrophages. Remember, macrophages are phagocytic cells that are found in tissues. Interferons are great because they help to draw these macrophages to specific sites where there might be a breach, where we might need some phagocytic activity to take place. There's also a system called the complement system, which is made up of about 30 different proteins. The complement system is fairly complex, but it is able to non-specifically target and kill off potentially invading cells. So if you have bacterial cells that could be coming in, it helps to cause them to lyse or bust open. It also, the complement system helps to trigger inflammation, and inflammation is good because it tells the rest of the body that, hey, there's some sort of problem in this particular area. So inflammation is one of those really nice early signs that something is wrong. And the body recognizes that and can send defenses to that area. So the inflammatory response, like I mentioned before, if you think about what inflammation is, inflammation has some main hallmarks. If you think of areas that could be inflamed, the swelling of the tissue in an area is one cardinal sign of inflammation. Redness, pain, and heat. Those are all things that inflammation will bring to a particular tissue. So say you cut your finger, you're making dinner, you cut your finger with a knife. You have not only maybe blood from the actual breach into the tissue, but then after you get the blood, the bleeding under control, then you're left with inflammation. So there's pain at the site, there's swelling, there's redness, and often heat. The inflammation response is good because now the body knows that there is a problem in this area, and molecules will be released that lead to more inflammation. And that inflammation then leads to the beginning of the healing response. So we need to activate the immune system to target any potential pathogens that could have come in, but also now we need to fix the tissue. So inflammation is a great way to do that. One way that the inflammatory response or inflammation is begun is through the use of mast cells. So mast cells are actually immune cells that are found in lots of different types of connective tissue. Connective tissue could be blood cells, it could be bones, it could be fat, and other types of tissue that help to hold things together. But these mast cells are going to release a chemical called histamine. Histamine is going to trigger blood vessels to dilate and become more permeable. So again, if you think about what's happening in inflammation, we have a redness that you see from the outside. That's because the blood vessels have dilated and are releasing components into that tissue. The heat comes from that as well. So histamine is a great way to start an inflammatory response. If you have allergies, you potentially take an antihistamine. That antihistamine is going to reduce the swelling you have in your respiratory system, reduce potentially itchy, watery eyes, sneezing. All of this is a part of the inflammatory response due to histamine release, due to an allergic response. So we'll talk about allergies a little bit more too. But inflammation is a great way for the body to send a signal to other parts of the body that there's a problem here. Potentially there could be an infection if we don't bring immune cells, but also that tissues have been damaged and we need to start some sort of healing response as well. So pretty cool. So again, the enhanced blood flow that happens with inflammation is good because it helps to not only deliver any chemicals that are necessary to help with the healing response, but also helps to deliver complement proteins, which can help with pathogen control. The chemicals that are in the blood supply also help to draw more phagocytic cells to the area. So those macrophages will be attracted to that area. And then if you think about what happens as a response to an infected area, later, the accumulation of pus will be found in particular tissues. Pus is, again, sort of a yellowish, whitish fluid, and it's very rich in white blood cells, dead pathogens, and cell debris from damaged tissues. So the white color, the yellow color that you see is due to all of the cells, those white blood cells, and potentially dead pathogens in that area as well. This is showing you what happens in the inflammation process. So again, here is your skin, here's a blood vessel down here, here's a splinter, right? Splinter comes in, it's got pathogens on it, most likely. We have a breach through our innate skin barrier, right? So that skin barrier, maybe it didn't penetrate all the way down. In this case, it did, it got into the dermis. So now we have pathogens that have entered into the tissue. Our mast cells in this particular tissue are going to release histamine. Capillaries are going to dilate. So you can see they go from very small diameter to larger diameter here. Not only do they dilate, but they actually become more permeable. So you can see now that my neutrophils, which are white blood cells, are going to migrate to this area in response to signaling molecules that have been sent from these macrophages out here. So this is all good. Again, you can see the splinter has been removed here, but now I've got an inflammation response. So you can see there's redness, swelling that has happened here in this tissue. Neutrophils will continue to move to this area. They digest and help to break down pathogens and the dead cell debris. So again, as mitosis starts to happen quickly to repair the damage in the skin, we also need to break down those dead skin cells, and the tissue will ultimately heal. The neutrophils will be reabsorbed, and you can see that the blood vessels are now back to a constricted state, so that the redness and the swelling are starting to decrease at this point. So again, really good response, very quick response in a localized area. The goal is to get rid of all these pathogens. We don't want these pathogens to be able to get into the blood supply and become a problem, or continue to multiply and maybe spread through to other tissues nearby as well. So let's watch this. Chemotaxis. Chemotaxis is the movement of cells. Taxis is movement towards a chemical or a molecule. So neutrophils, again, these neutrophils they know where to go, where to move to a site of injury because of the signaling molecules, those chemicals that are released from the macrophages, and also the histamine that is released from the mast cells. Those act as signaling molecules to tell the neutrophil where to go. So they're attracted to it. Chemotaxis could also be that cells are repelled from an area by a chemical as well. But typically when we're thinking white blood cells, we're thinking that they are attracted or drawn to an area to help fight off a particular potential infection.
Watch a neutrophil move toward a chemical attractant supplied in a glass micropipette.
Neutrophil.
Neutrophils are white blood cells
So
involved in defense against pathogens that
glass
respond to chemical signals via
is
G protein-linked receptors.
releasing chemicals
They are
that
attracted to sites
cause
of injured
this
tissue where pathogens may be found.
macrophage
Notice
to
how
be
the cell
moving
forms an
towards
actin-based protrusion in the direction of the
this
chemoattractant.
chemical. So that's
Credit:
chemotaxis, or
Henry Bourne,
chemoattractant
University
is
of
what this would be
California,
called.
San Francisco Medical School.
So that happens inside of your blood supply as the neutrophils move out of the blood supply. Oops. You can see that they move out. This process is called diapedesis. That's where they sort of squish out of the blood supply and then move through the tissues to get to the chemical signals. Okay. So I mentioned again, inflammation is great, great way that the body knows that there's a problem. It can be local or it can be systemic. Systemic inflammation, where we have inflammation throughout the body in different places, can be problematic. Fever. So again, when you have inflammation in a localized area, say you again have a splinter, you sprain your ankle, and you feel that tissue, you might feel warmth in that area. But in overall fever, where the entire body temperature is increased, is a systemic inflammatory response. And that has to do with particular, they're called pyrogens. So pyrogens are substances that are released by macrophages in response to specific pathogens. And the reason that a fever can be good in an infection, it could be bacterial or viral, is that the pathogen, that virus or that bacterial cell, could be potentially killed by raising the body temperature. So we know pathogens like our body temperature, but we want to kill those pathogens. So our immune system, under the control of the brain, helps to increase the temperature overall of our body, and in doing so can help fight off and kill some of those pathogens. Septic shock is a life-threatening condition, and this is caused by overwhelming inflammatory responses. So this is a situation where potentially you have a infection that it has made its way into your blood supply. If a person becomes septic, or we say they have sepsis, typically a bacterial infection, could be a fungus, has made its way into the blood supply and is now circulating around the entire body. So inflammation happening everywhere can be a very big problem. The major problem with sepsis is when we look back here, if I have inflammation all over the body and my blood vessels are becoming very permeable, I lose a lot of fluid to all the tissues of my body, and now the blood pressure is very, very low. So that's the type of shock that can happen in the body, which can lead to death. Okay, all right. I think we're going to stop there and we will pick up with the adaptive immune system, but that is a good summary of the innate system for now. Thanks.